and Kim and Melinda for creating a forum for such rich exchange, you know, between all of us. This would have meant so much to me as a young writer. I knew I wanted to be a writer really at the time. I was probably in kindergarten and first grade. Our school was such that we were taken to the library on Fridays, the school library, and I would check out 10 books every week and just consume them all. And once I had exhausted the school supply, my parents started taking me, I was born and raised here in LA. They started taking me to the Baldwin Hills Branch Library, and I would go, this went from like first, second, third grade, all the way up to high school, and I would check out 10 books, which was the limit, you know, both at school and at the library, and just read, because I was a bookworm. I was so amazed that I could be inside of the head of anyone in the world. I could travel any place on the globe between the pages of a book, and that was just amazing to me. And so then with that passion, I wanted to be a part of that storytelling exchange, a part of saying like what it is to be human and what it is to feel where we are, you know, wherever you're writing about. It meant so much to me to read about someone, you know, say, you know, across the globe in Africa or in Australia or Costa Rica, El Salvador. So by the time I got to high school, besides taking, you know, English, as we all have to take, I decided to take journalism, and so I was on the school paper. And my teacher, Montserrat Fontes, was not only a journalist but a fiction writer, and she recognized that that was really my passion. And so although, you know, every week we were producing a school paper and selling it to the students for 10 cents a piece, and so we were all learning how to interview people and how to fact check and all that, and, you know, take photographs. Montserrat Fontes she took me under her wing and helped me understand what it was to be a fiction writer. That is to look at the truth using my imagination, using psychology, using what we know about how we work as human beings. She wrote First Confession and Dreams of the Centaur, which are both novels loosely based on her family and set in a Texas border town and in Mexico. And so anyway, she was so important to my growth as a writer. I felt nurtured by her, you know, nourished by her. By the time I went to UCLA, I found another mentor in Usc Kessler, who was also a writer. He taught me the importance of editing. That is, in being merciless in cutting what you don't need in what you've written. So with Montserrat, I learned, you know, the kind of letting go and letting loose on the page. And with Usc Kessler, I learned like how to cut, how to trim, how to shape into something that is a work of art and is tight as a drum. And that's when I started publishing, really was in college from the age of 19 on. And Usc Kessler was responsible for that because he, behind my back, submitted my work and I won an award, and then he started to encourage me to publish in small literary magazines. And so my story collection actually spans quite a bit of writing time from like the time I was 19 to more than a decade later. And so I was thinking that I would read you a story that was kind of, well, I would say inspired by my childhood, hanging out in my grandmother's neighborhood in the Adams district. And this is set in the 70s and is about a little known phenomenon. It was when plastic surgery was embarrassing. And so there were white women who would go home with their black nurses and live in their homes until they were fully healed, until their nose job or their face job was done. And so this story is about a little girl who is trying to understand this because she lives next door to a nurse who takes in these women. And so she's trying to understand why it is that they're hiding out there, like why it is that it doesn't count that they see them too. So this is called Why It Can Never Be Boogie. Boogie and I meet after school around 4 to race the turtles or ride our bikes to the liquor store and back. Boogie's a bit slower than me, which bothers him because I'm a girl. and Boogie is so fat. I think he's no more than 10 and only a head above 5 feet. Weighing up there in the 200s of pounds, Boogie is huge. But he's cool, shows me the hangs around Washington Boulevard and the avenues. I just got to my grandma's in LA, and there's nobody but her and Boogie next door to show me what to do. Round 7, Boogie has to go inside to scratch his father's dandruff and oil his scalp. Boogie's old man has long, good, wavy white hair. I think Boogie and his folks have a lot of white in him. Boogie is creamy colored with fleshy fat, which is fine because Boogie's still pretty. His father, too, sometimes lets me come in and watch as he sits on the floor under Boogie. He has long black eyelashes that he looks at you from behind in his sneaky sort of way. He pats my butt whenever I leave, and I turn around and smile because I know he means good. Other times I'm not allowed inside because Boogie's mother works. She's a nurse over at one of those fancy hospitals somewhere. I know it's fancy because Boogie said the patients arrive in limousines. Imagine that. I even saw a fancy car pull up in front of Boogie's old rinky-dink yellow house. I couldn't see who got out because Grandma pushed me from the window. Don't know why she did that. But Boogie and I were going through some lows because Boogie's getting crap about his smell and his fat, and I'm getting the big titty, big booty crap at school. But Boogie and me, we've got the turtles, we've got our bikes, the liquor store, we've got each other. So today we ride our bikes to the store for some now and laters, but I have to go to the bathroom bad. Grandma's not home yet from cleaning the Bird's house in Bel Air, the Bel Air Birds I call them. And I left my key at home before school this morning, and we can't go to Boogie's because his mother's working. So we begged the liquor store owner if I can use the bathroom, and we try and explain the situation, be close to tears, and the man just keeps shaking his head no. I can't see Boogie because my eyes are burning and I'm starting to cry. Now the hot pee is stinging as it streams down my legs into a dusty yellow puddle on that a-hole's cracked floor. I feel sick, and Boogie's pulling me by the arm out of the place, and he's getting me on my bike. I ride home behind Boogie, sniffling, feeling hot and red as a beet, the piss drying to a thick stickiness between my thighs and legs and on the inside of my sock. Boogie's father answers the door with a, "No, you can't come in," because Boogie's mother's working. Now Boogie's throwing a tantrum and yelling. Who gives a crap if she sees that old white bitch anyway? I don't have a clue what Boogie's talking about, but Boogie's father grabs him by the ear, clamps his mouth, and slaps him hard on his fat cheek. But the odd thing is that he pulls us in the house anyway, and I'm allowed to go to the bathroom to clean up. The house feels dank and clammy inside, and I hear this muffled, retard-like voice coming from across the hall, so I peek. And there in the bedroom with the door half open is Boogie's mother in her nurse uniform and a white woman with black eyes, blue cheeks, and bandages covering everything else on her face. The smell of medicine and the look on that battered woman's face sends me to terror. I can't help it. I scream. And now Boogie's shoving me into the bathroom, and he closes the door, hugs me up, me smelling high with pee like that, and we stay there, me still terrified, until Grandma comes to fetch me. Grandma puts me in the bathtub at home, the soap smelling like lemons in Grandma's hands, huge and soft with rough lines, splashing the bubbles over my body, till it soothes me to sleep. I wake to the smell of fried bananas, black-eyed peas, and coconut rice. I hug Grandma from behind and ask her what's wrong with that white woman at Boogie's. She had a facelift, Grandma says, and so I ask her what that is, and she says, it's when doctors cut your face and then sew it up to look younger. I say I thought the woman was hiding from thugs who beat her up. Grandma says, you can say that too. I'm completely confused, and Grandma's laughing and says, she's just hiding while she heals up, and she wanted a place where nobody would see her. Boogie's mother's been keeping white women like her for years now. Extra money, you know. I say to Grandma, what do you mean where nobody can see him? I've seen him. Boogie's seen him. Boogie's mother and father's seen him. Grandma just laughs. I'm mad. That beat-up white woman gives me nightmares, and now Boogie and me stop talking. I play by myself with the turtles and ride my bike to the liquor store alone, where every time I look to see if my pee has left its mark anywhere on that a-hole's dusty, cracked floor. Do you have any questions? Anything you want to talk about with writing? Or... Yes, John.
What are some techniques you use in writing to create your stories?
Well, techniques, I would say, it's just more about thinking what it is that makes us tick. You know, I don't believe that there's any true difference between, and we were talking about this in class earlier, about the male and female psyche. When it comes down to it, it's really like a cultural and societal costume that we put on. And so as a writer, we have to look at what are our commonalities, and we find our commonalities through looking at these peculiarities, the uniqueness, the details about this guy or this girl and why he did this to her or why she did that to him. And so I think that for me, my technique would be just like, I get a character in my head, I start thinking about who they are, where they grew up, who their parents are, who their siblings might be, whether they do or not have siblings, how they move through the world, what their vulnerabilities are they defensive, you know, does life happen to them or do they make life happen? All of those kind of things I look at while I'm creating a story, and those vulnerabilities bring about the other characters in the story. And I never have a plan or an outline. I just go along on that path that this character or these group of characters are going on, and I'm surprised along with them. And then by the end, I've gone on a journey just like they have. Yes?
Some of the students have read Jane Eyre, and we were talking about it. We were talking about the Gothic romance. And as you were reading your story, I just was thinking, in Jane Eyre or the Gothic romance, there's usually a woman hidden in a big house. And that something's wrong, there's some secret. And,
right.
The young heroine has to come in and solve the mystery and gain her own footing and almost become an adult. And your story is a beautiful example of that, but it has humor.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, Jeremy.
You know, today I told students about how my version of Boogie used to go up to Rancho Park and cannonball into the pool. He float all the water out, and he didn't care, even though he was really fat, he wore bikini swimming trunks.
Yeah.
He was shameless, and then he slipped off the high-diving board, and half his body his torso struck to the concrete, and
wow.
in the water. We all thought he was dead, and made a horrible swoop noise.
Yeah.
And then he just got up.
So I have to.
He could fall from great heights and not be injured.
So I just want to explain to you guys that we discovered in our lunches, Jeremy and I have been going to lunch for years, and it wasn't until like maybe just last year that we realized that we had known the same guy and had written stories about him. So my Boogie is Googie that we both knew, and Jeremy has written stories about us as well. And it's just amazing that we found each other and had been inspired by the same person. And in bookstores we're even shelved, and in libraries shelved near each other. And I was thinking, because when I told my mom this, and she said, wow, well, he really worked on both of you and just said, I'm going to be immortalized by a male and a female, you know, so, yeah.
And I showed it to my kids, and I said, you know, he's handsome in a robust, fat way. No, he's not. And then, of course, that graph disappeared. I mean, I just saw it 3 days ago. I would have brought it. It just vanished. So
wow, I would love to see it if you find it, yeah.
Where can we buy your books?
Let's see, in the library, on Amazon. Now that so many bookstores are closing, I mean, Borders, you know, I just went to Borders a few days ago in Hollywood because they're, you know, clearing house, and, you know, perhaps in Barnes and Noble, but that's another thing that's happening. That's a writer friend of mine just said that her books were canceled by Penguin because Barnes and Noble's told her that and she's Latina, and that a Latina character that doesn't have a problem that is an expected problem of a Latina character is not going to sell here in Barnes and Noble, and they canceled the books. And so there are those kind of horror stories going on, but at the same time, if you're writing and you're compelled to write and it's your passion, you just keep pushing no matter what the market is. You know, all this, you're just asking me where to find my books, but I'm just saying, I just started thinking about how you know, there are less and less venues, less and less, you know, neighborhood bookstores, less and less of the chains. But you know, there's Amazon and you know, online, so there you can find it for sure. Anyone else? Yes.
Do you and Boogie still talk?
No, I don't know what Boogie's doing. Do you know what Boogie's doing? Do you know it?
He does.
It's really sad. I mean, there's a moment where I was coming home from college, and I took him to a friend of mine's house, Albert John's, who's a Christian Lebanese guy. And I just thought, you know, we really enjoy this party. And he was terrified even going to the party. And after that, we stopped seeing each other because, you know, I didn't know what he was up to. And I was teaching high school, and I didn't know if he would have marijuana on him. And if he got stopped, and I would lose my car. If he got stopped, I would lose my teaching license.
Yeah.
So essentially, I mean, he understood. He didn't take offense.
Yeah.
But it was sort of like this divide. And our brother saw him last, and he was not in good health. You know, he had lost a leg.
Wow.
You know, so that's the last I heard of him. But I, you know, I suspect he's not alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so that answers your question. Yes, Melinda.
You talked a lot about reading a lot when you were
Yes.
younger. Did that set you apart from your peers? Our group here, they're in an intense academic program, and
Okay.
so not that you work harder than your other classmates. Do you work harder, or you just they're interested in academics? And,
Yeah.
and I'm just wondering, what was your experience in junior high and high school
Well,
as a reader?
Well, so I rode the bus to school, the school bus, and even though like the kids who kind of held court would sit in the back, I still would take my books to kind of the middle back. And so even though I was a bookworm geek, I was still sort of, because I didn't care and I was just like, I was considered an individual. I was liable to wear anything crazy, because I was fully grown by the time I was 10, they called me Teasley, so I was tall, I had a big afro, and I would wear my aunt's clothes, you know, like I might wear like a blue suede skirt or just like anything, and so I was just sort of like a character, and I didn't care about like reading, so I was just reading on the bus, no matter how loud the music was, no matter how loud they were, and so I gained respect in that I was true to myself, you know, so, and so when I tell my daughter the same thing, because she's also in, you know, an academic program, so it's like a school within a school, it's called CORE, and there really isn't that much animosity between, you know, the home school and the, you know, and the school within a school kids, because there's the exchange in PE and, you know, music and all those kind of classes, and then she's on varsity basketball, and so there's that, just like, I mean, that thing is just like, be true to yourself. That's always the best, you know, advice. You know, it's like Shakespeare said, to thyself be true. There's no better advice that anyone could give. So, any other questions?
Did you bring any other short stories? We've got like 15 minutes if you wanted to read another short story.
Oh gosh,
one.
the rest of them are so, you know, like I was censoring as I was reading, you probably could tell. They're so gnarly. I don't think I feel comfortable reading.
Are they?
And my students know, because I've told them about, you know.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Talk about your experience describing the documentary that you were involved with.
Oh, the documentary. Okay, so, and then you guys heard about that a little bit this morning too, that the BBC wanted to do an American series, and so they asked American authors, there were 4 of us that they approached to do different aspects of culture here, of US culture. And because they don't have prom in the UK, they asked me to do, and this was on the basis of reading Glow in the Dark. So here's an example of a fiction writer going on a journey that was never expected just because some Brits read my short stories. So they came to me through my website. There wasn't even an interview or anything. They said, you know, we're doing it. They sent the director and producer to my house in LA, and then we all left together for Atlanta. And they had chosen the students who would be the characters. That was the first thing that I had to get used to, was that real people were characters, and that they were chosen for how, I don't know, like how dramatic the documentary would be. So they chose, like a popular football player who had 2 girlfriends, and they picked a blonde who was seen as like a dumb blonde, or that was the way that she came across when interviewed. And her older boyfriend, had killed his best friend in a drunk driving accident. So it was like a lot of the stuff that they were going for in terms of characters for the documentary were all sort of typical American stereotypes that they wanted to, that they just wanted to see fulfilled. And so really the process of making the documentary was a bit of a struggle between me and the British director in terms of like, well, I think that we should talk to this student too, and and this was set at a magnet school where they had a high-ranking academic program, but still, the subject matter was kind of boiled down to what the kids, how naive some of the kids were about, say, what was going on in Iraq, what the kids thought about. Like there was one character who's gay, and she has come out, and it's about like, and she's also interracially dating, and so about racism in the South. So it really turned out to be about like the politics of being a Southern American teenager, and I'm fairly happy with what came out, but I was just surprised that I was that it's seen as my documentary because there was a director. I mean, like it's like as if it's my film, and I was completely responsible for every part of it. But it was definitely an interesting and enriching journey, and I always loved working with high school students. So, yeah. Any other questions? No? Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.